talking more than about our review, I can't remember what we did next. Let's just pop over here, holding your pencil at the right angle, not only when you're shading, but just to get that full edge of your graphite on there. And I really like this sketch. It makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. You could geek out and almost add to your notes. You want to do the same thing with your blending tool. So I'm going to just throw that in here. Little asterisks. This applies to your blending tool too. All right, you guys add that note in there. Another one here was to keep your pencil sharp. And I've been just using this little guy a lot. I was joking with a couple of the people that logged in first that literally on the floor over here next to my table, it's just a pile of shavings. I need to sweep that up, but on your desk, you might like reach over in the corner, sharpen this a little bit. I love these things. This would be something to have. If you don't have it, you don't need to grab it now, but you know, it just makes it so much easier when you're using sharp pencils. You're going to get way more out of your pencil kit than just being lazy and not sharpening that up. All right, let's continue popping down here to when it talks about a light source, to just consider that outline. You don't want to outline unless you're cartooning. I got that note right here. And the outline just makes it look artificial. The sphere drawing you're going to do is going to be as realistic as possible. You definitely don't want an outline on that. So here I just sketched super light, did all my shading, and left it be. And it gives sort of that implied idea that that's a sphere. You don't need to outline it to tell people that, okay? I'm gonna be drawing another light bulb like this maybe in a little bit too, to kind of just indicate like the light source and where the light's coming from. And that's really important when you're trying to shade. You need a consistent light source. All right, let's pop down here. Talked about cleaning your blending tool. Don't think we need to rehash that. Varying your hand pressure. I think for some of you, this was new, especially it kind of coincides here with the gradation in your value bar, pressing hard and pressing lighter as you go. Hand pressure matched with control of your graphite equals somebody that knows what they're doing with the pencil to shade. And you have to start to practice how to control hand pressure and how to get the most out of your graphite. That's one of the big tricks in terms of shading with pencil. So we did a couple samples here, just light pressure, medium pressure, and heavy. And then we popped back over here and did a value bar, okay? I introduced a little stippling sample here. So you understand what that is. And then we popped into the assignment, the value bar assignment. I'm gonna sort of let that be. I posted a video on me doing that after we left, because I just felt like it was a little rushed. That hour flew by so fast, and I wanted to make sure that that was really covered well for you guys. And that video is still posted there in Google Classroom for you to watch if you're struggling on the value bar assignment or you want to make some changes to it. So let's continue then with where we're at with shading tips and tricks. You can see, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm using a lot bigger piece of paper than you guys. If you need to turn to another sketchbook page or whatever, just get creative with this. They're not in any particular order, but yeah. So let's see. I think another thing, and it's kind of goes back almost here to the beginning, but it's in the kind of the pencil use world, is definitely use your whole pencil kit. If you don't have a pencil kit, I don't know, that's too bad that you didn't grab it or ask for it when your locker was cleaned out. But you definitely can get a lot out of just one pencil, especially if it's like a 2B or an HB. But use the whole kit. The kit's going to come with all kinds of different graphite in it. And that's so helpful. I mean, when they pack this thing, my kit had this on the back. Showed you guys this before. It's the 4H all the way to the 8B. And with the same amount of hand pressure, these are all the different gradations you get just with the pencil kit alone. To me, that's pretty cool. It's going to save you a little bit of trouble when you're trying to pop over here and figure out hand pressure. Some of you just aren't going to get the darks you want. Go ahead and grab, you know, an 8B here, you know, or even a 3B. So this is going to become really important when you're shading your sphere this next week, because you're going to have spots that are really light, spots that you're going to need that are honestly almost pitch black. And I don't know, if you're using like a 2H or even HB, it's really hard, no matter how hard you press, to get it to do what an 8B or even a 4B will do. So your pencil kit obviously isn't going to look like mine, but a lot of your kits had something like that in there. It's just a great reference to use, you know, to use your entire pencil kit, all the pencils in there. So let's talk paper really fast. I'm going to draw a sheet of paper, sort of like the edge of a piece of paper here, you know, kind of in 3D. And I'm going to zoom in and actually show kind of the thickness of here. So I'm going to call this paper. I want to talk about the surface of paper. When you're shading, you can actually destroy or damage the surface of the paper using too much pressure. So if you had to zoom in here, every paper, every type of paper has some form of this. This is not the sketch you thought you would do today. Okay. Every paper has what's called a tooth. The tooth of the paper is essentially just the way that that paper feels. So if you have printing paper, it's going to be really, really, really smooth. Okay, that paper is. So it could be, you know, super smooth. Or for those of you that have used pastel paper, or maybe you bought a really good sketchbook with really quality paper, like heavy paper in there, that paper actually has like a texture. And that varies. So I'm going to pop back over here to the sketch of my paper, and I'm just going to add a little bit of texture to that to kind of exemplify what that's like. Thinking back to our printmaking unit, oh man, I can't remember what paper it is. One of the papers we used had a tooth on one side, and the other side was a little smoother. What am I thinking of? Does anybody remember that?
Watercolor paper. Oh
yeah, the really fancy paper. Yeah, so the tooth of the paper is actually really helpful, because if you kind of zoomed in, let's kind of circle that. When you zoom in on that, it actually kind of has ridges and valleys like this. So this is a close-up. There's the bottom of the paper. We'll call this a close-up. And this is important to know. I don't know if anybody's taught you this before, but as you guys shade this across the surface of your paper, good drawing paper has a tooth. They make it that way because as your pencil is dragged across this surface, the idea is that each of those little ridges is grabbing and holding on to graphite, okay? So as you bring your pencil across that, it's actually holding on to more graphite as you go. And so technically, you know, a pencil mark across here is going to kind of pile up into each one of these as you go. And that's what you want, especially for those of you trying to get a dark, like a dark tone or a dark value. So again, nobody's ever shown you that before, but that's important to know. Okay. The warning here, and I'm going to make kind of a red asterisk here. It says warning. See if I can even spell this right. If you blend super hard right here, or those of you who have been using your finger, or you erase over and over and over again, or your pencil, let's say that all you have is a 4H, that'd be tragic. That's the lightest pencil, and if that's all you have, you're gonna have a hard time shading. But let's say you press super hard on this paper, you'll actually damage the tooth of the paper permanently. And I know some of you have discovered this, you just maybe didn't know what was going on, but you've drawn on top of it, and you just can't erase. You keep seeing ghost images of your previous erasings, or you maybe even get so aggressive you rip through the paper. But you can actually press these mountains in the tooth here and ruin your paper. So that's where using an entire pencil kit comes in super handy because if you're using a 6B pencil, you don't have to press so hard. You're not going to damage this tooth. You're going to get a lot richer dark value, and in the same drawing have areas where you're using an H pencil. So a good graphite artist will understand, wow, I got to be careful with my paper surface or I could damage the tooth. So I'm going to fill in my notes here on the warning. So I don't know how much simpler to say there. The tooth of the paper can be damaged if it's pressed down too hard. Any questions from you guys about paper or about this concept? Anybody? All right. I'm going to kind of box all this together here while I wait for you to take that note, because I feel like all of these notes here kind of live in the same world. Okay, at least those do anyway. All right, we're doing good. We just have a couple different things to note, and then we can jump into the sphere drawing.
We have a question, actually.
Go for it.
So if you blend too hard, will it ruin the paper too?
Yeah, I think it's not as aggressive though, Anna, because these are pretty soft. So, yeah, I actually, if I'm in a really dark spot on a drawing, I press pretty hard with this. But at that point, another note is I also know I'm almost done with the drawing. So if I mess up the tooth of the paper there, not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. All right. Here's just another simple note that a lot of you learned, but we maybe didn't say too much about it. Here's another piece of paper. I know it's a small one. Kind of looks like we're cartooning. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a drop shadow over here, just so we know it's an object. Eraser shield. Okay. And another thing you can call this is, or, you know, AKA a smudge guard. So that when you have a drawing and you've been it's already been shaded over here, this eraser shield can be laid down on it and give you a spot to place your hand and know that you're not going to get, blending. Remember, I had stuff on the edge of my hand. Those of you that watched the video saw that I was actually messing up my value bar because this part of my hand was getting graphite on it. I know it sounds really weird, but occasionally I'll grab my kneaded eraser and pull that off my hand. I know, TMI, but it works as a quick fix in the moment. Okay. So I guess you could say in parentheses, like place hand here. All right. So eraser shield, just an extra piece of paper. Super helpful. I use it quite a bit, especially on a really fancy drawing. Maybe I'm drawing faces and I cannot afford to have this part of my hand screw up something that I spent a lot of time drawing. So smudge guard, it's a good tip, good thing to remember. All right, I'm gonna pop over here to hand pressure. Here's a note that actually works in your favor when you're using, especially like B pencils, it works really good. So those of you with a pencil kit, I'm gonna go ahead and use a 2B right now. This camera's funky. It focuses right on the center object and not out here on the edges. Anyway, this is a really simple thing, and maybe some of you have done this before, didn't really know what you were doing, but this over here. Like when you're drawing things and you do need a little bit of an outline, you can actually, watch this, taper your line. So I'm going to draw just a sphere here. I'm going to start really, really, really thin and then I'm going to press a little bit harder down here, and then come back to it being thin. So this is all kind of with one sort of an oval. That's cool. So all with one pencil stroke or a couple here, you kind of get this tapered line, okay? Now look at that just for a second. I know this part's not showing up in the camera very well, but just by pressing down, I made this look 3D because I pressed harder down here and sort of implied a shadow right here. Just by pressing hard, you know, just by tapering my line. You can do that with lots of different things when you're drawing. I guess I'll just do kind of an organic line here. I'll start thin, I'll press really hard, and I'll go back to it being thin. And that right here implies a shadow. Now I'm gonna grab my darkest pencil. I have an 8B over here, it's broken, so I'm gonna sharpen it super fast. Likes to break because it's so soft of graphite. I'll try this with a darker pencil. That's nice. You guys can hear me blowing away the graphite when I'm done, because this tends to shed a little bit because it's not compressed so hard at the factory right here. The graphite's actually compressed really loose, so it kind of sheds as you go. Okay. I guess I can label that one the 8B. You see it shedding right here? That happens. Don't do this. Don't blend, don't wipe it off with your hand. Just blow that off and it will be gone. I'm gonna go ahead and label this one my HB up here. You can see a difference between those two lines. So what tip did I just give you right there when you have little shavings?
Blow them off.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say blow away the shavings. And I'll say don't swipe with your hands. Okay, that was kind of an unexpected tip right there, but I'll do kind of a wind effect there. You guys doing all right? So quiet. I hope you're following along just fine. Like I said, I'm trying to record this time, so hopefully it'll work to post as kind of a how-to if you want to rewatch. Hey, we only have a couple more notes, and then we'll start to apply this. And you guys are sticking with me really well, so good job. I think what I'm going to do now is just pop over here. I just have the most room on my notes kind of over in this corner. So I'm going to do a section right here talking about the light source, and this will impact your next drawing. So this is going to become important. I'm going to take just a couple more notes right here and be done. So if I'm going too fast or if you have a question, you just got to speak up. Again, I have it on a view where I can't see all of you at the moment because I want to be able to see what I'm doing, and you'll have to speak up. I won't be able to see your hand raised. So let's talk light source. And this is almost its own topic, so I'm going to talk light source. Throw a double line under that because it's important to me. Some examples of light sources. Somebody give me one. Speak up.
Sun.
Sun is the best, okay, because it's so harsh, it's so bright, but you're gonna have to be next to, you're gonna have to be where you can get in some sun, okay, so working outdoors. Hey, quick note, before electricity, what would have been a light source? Somebody.
What?
Pre-electricity, what was the light source?
Candles. Candles, oil lamps.
Yep. Let's put those down for kicks. Okay, I'm going to put a smile here because if you're using candles or lamps, your parents are going to want to know what in the world you're doing. You're like, oh, just doing a drawing for Mr. Anderson by candlelight. Okay. That was a very, very popular option, though, for a very long time. I mean, I would venture to say hundreds of years. We're talking like the Middle Ages, I don't know, all the way through, obviously, the late 1800s-ish. And that's a big deal. This had a big influence on the way artists were making their work. Poorly lit studios ended up, you take these paintings nowadays and you put them in these art museums under big, bright lights. Actually, the artist, if they were came back in time, I wonder what they would think about seeing their painting in such bright light. I don't know. All right, what's another source we can use today other than the sun?
Light
A
bulb.
lamp. Like electrical lamp.
I'm going to go ahead and say lamp. I want to hear from some different people. Jack and Anna are on fire. When you talk about a lamp, I kind of like that cheesy lamp that you see on the beginning of the Star movies. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This type of lamp, not kidding you, is actually really great for sketching with because it is such a harsh light. It's so bright and it just gives you that single light source. I'm a fan of that. Okay. Like a desk lamp, I guess. Okay. Somebody else have an idea? Think outside the box. Another solution.
Phone screen.
I'm not writing that down, even though if you're desperate, you could. Anybody sitting next to a window in their room?
I was gonna say that, but that's sun.
It's in the same world. Yep. Thank you,
Actual
Blake.
lighting.
Daniel is on purpose using his window shut for the silhouette effect. I'm going to say window, and I'm a fan of this. Whoa, window. Because you get that direct light, okay? And that's important. You're getting direct sunlight. And even if it's, I'm going to write this, like a diffused light. I don't know if I spelled that right. Diffused is kind of what Daniel has. He's got like a something over the window, so it's breaking up the hard light. That's not a bad deal, but it's going to be able to give him, you just need something that's going to create good drop shadows, okay? Any other options you guys thought of that I didn't write down?
The moon.
The moon. Okay, Daniel, we'll put moon over here. As long as it's a super moon. I wasn't ready for that one. Some of my favorites, I'm going to circle it with my color pencil here. I'm definitely going to use the sun, and I'm going to definitely go with a single lamp. Some that you don't want to do, and you don't have to write this down. I hate shading in my classroom because I have, let's see, six different fluorescent light banks up here, and they create, literally, I'm not kidding you, 6 different shadows. They create 6 shadows. So when students try to shade in here, you put an object, I don't know, I'll grab something here. You put an object in the middle of this, and you almost either don't have a shadow. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I have like all kind of repeating shadows down here. It's not showing up super good, but you get the idea. Have you ever been in the middle of a football field or a soccer field or something at night under the lights, and you have like 6 shadows, right? Because there are all these different sources. Well, when it comes to drawing, you definitely want a singular light source. So I'm going to say that. Singular light source. Okay. I'm going to write down here that you need what's called hard light. A hard light is like the desk lamp or the sun. It's a single source. Okay. And it's going to create one shadow. I'll add that as my last note. You need one. It's called the drop shadow. Okay. So let's talk about that example that I always use when kind of going with this. Let's draw just a light bulb, kind of a cartoon light bulb here. Don't take too long. See how I sketch that? Put the filament in here. Little cartoon light bulb. Make it look bright. There we go. So let's kind of use this as our note. When you have a singular light source, I'm going to sketch 3 different spheres here. I'm going to go ahead and do it in ink. So notice I kind of use the dotted line where the bright spot is. A little ink tip for you. We're not really talking too much about ink in this shading unit. We're definitely talking about graphite. There we go. I have 3 different spheres. And if I kind of pop quiz you and said, shade each of these spheres based off of where this light source is hitting them, how would you do? So here's what I'm talking about. This sphere is getting hit this direction by the light. You guys see this? This sphere is getting hit this way, and this one's getting hit this way. So when it comes to shading the sphere, I'm always going to be grabbing some type of a B pencil. In this case, I have a 2B. And this side of the sphere is going to be dark. And then it's going to get lighter and lighter towards the top to where it's almost white. I almost drew that too small. It's too tight and small of an area to try to shade. Let's try this other one. So if light is hitting this here, this side is going to be the darkest, the opposite side. And like a value bar, I'm going to pull out the graphite, doing a little hatching and such here. Pull out the graphite until it's really bright at the top. And I know you guys can see that. And this one here, you could probably guess, since the light source is here, watch what I do with my pencil. I go over here and I know now right here is going to be the darkest spot. So I'm pressing pretty hard. I might even be damaging the tooth of the paper slightly. But notice also, look at my pencil direction. Just take a break. I kind of float back and forth as if this was a round surface. I am not sketching back and forth this way or up and down. If you do, this is going to look really flat. Go with what's called the contour of the surface, as if you literally were holding a sphere and your pencils would be moving around on that surface. Okay, I like that. That's cool. With drop shadows, I always go with a dark pencil. So I'm going to be using a 4B. I always go darker and darker. Again, I just am referring to this kit where you can see the 4Bs kind of in here. I could use the 8B if I want. And the drop shadow is exactly opposite of the light source. You guys watch me do this. Just take a break. You need to see this. You're going to be drawing a sphere for your homework here. So I'm going to kind of go like this. And all of these point right back to that light. And the darkest spot of the drop shadow is right here behind the sphere. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to kind of blend that with my finger. Oh, that looks cool. See that? So go ahead and give that a try. Don't take too long here. Directly away from the shadow. Don't make it too long of a shadow. Just blending though, just using my finger here, I got a little graphite on my finger. Really looks cool. And remember, it's going to gradate out away. It's not going to be dark the whole way. It's going to be the darkest right next to the sphere. Oh yeah, that's cool. I'm happy with that. So refer to this section of your notes this week with your homework. I'm kind of pausing to give you a chance to do that, but for the sake of time, again, you can rewatch this So don't blow up. If you aren't quite there, you can always rewatch the footage. And I'm going to go ahead and go right over here to the last notes. I have one last little section here, and this is not too hard to do. I just want to talk about backgrounds when you're shading. Do you shade the whole background? Do you not even worry about the background? Like, what do you do? I'm going to show you just a quick tip for, especially for beginners, that really kind of drives this home and shows you the effect that a background can have on your shading. So let's talk backgrounds. So if you're still stuck shading those spheres, take a break. I don't want you to miss this. So jump back over here. This is your last notes. We made it. All right, so we're going to talk backgrounds here. And I'm going to do 2 sample sketches and show you like background versus no background. Let me do it this way. I'm a right-hander, so I always forget that my hand is probably right in the middle of the screen. So here's paper number 1. It's going to have a little drawing of a sphere on it. And here's the same artwork by a different student.
Wait, is this background or no background?
I'm going to show you the verses. Okay. So let's put verses like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll put a sphere. Let's say this student drew a really good sphere too. Both of these students turned in really nice artworks. Okay, and what I mean by nice, it means that they employed all these tips. Now you guys don't be too hard on yourself with like, oh, I'm a beginner shader and this is, you know, I'm struggling. Just remember these tips. I want to see you using these. And you'll see the way that I'm going to be grading your assignments is using all these tricks. Just kind of like use this as your rubric, use this as your guide. Okay. Most of these will apply to the things you do. Let's get back here to our background tip though. When you, okay, watch this happen. Okay. I don't want you to look up and go, oh my gosh, how did you, what did you just do? If I draw a horizon line, let's say kind of like this, and I darken the background in, watch this. It does a couple things to this sphere. It makes it look like it's sitting on a table. It also awkwardly looks like a Pokemon in a way, I don't know. But it also pushes it forward a little bit. And if I really geeked out, I mean, this student like has shaded this thing. There's a drop shadow over here. You can just kind of picture a little finished drawing versus a student who just turned in a shaded sphere with no drop shadow and no background. That looks like it's floating to me. I'm going to say floating look versus, you know, this looks grounded. This looks like it has a horizon line. And that dark background pushes forward this light sphere, okay? And I'm just going to say the object, because it could be just about anything you're drawing. Any questions on that? It's funny how just a tiny little sketch of that makes that look way more 3D than this floating sphere, okay?
Wait, can you zoom in again? I can't see the words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I guess if you really wanted a lot of notes, you're going to say it has a drop shadow. Now, these tips are funny because you're going to see, now that you guys start looking at graphite drawings that maybe you've done or friends have done or just pros have done, or you see sketches online, you're going to start to see all these tips. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this stuff's kind of universal. And literally, I've given you guys all the tips I've gained just over the years sketching, things I learned in college, things I've been teaching for a long time, things I use. So there we go. That's kind of the whole shebang. Your notes will look something kind of like that. It'll just be your version. I'm excited to see them. And you just make sure you guys submit these today before midnight, I think is what it says on Google Classroom. Not too much class, especially if you follow along. And I'll put